never imagined a simple family barbecue would turn into one of the worst days of my life. One minute I was standing there, and the next, splash, ice-cold water hit me straight in the face. I gasped. It was so cold it took my breath away. My blouse stuck to my skin as the water soaked through, and for a second, the entire backyard went completely silent. Then the laughter started. Not from strangers, but from people I knew, Derek's friends, Sabrina, even some neighbors I thought I could trust. My own son, Derek, stood in front of me, holding a beer, and shouted loud enough for everyone to hear, "You need to cool down, selfish woman." All I asked for was a signature, for the kids. But you'd rather hoard everything like some paranoid old hag. I stood there, dripping wet, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. My knees shook, but I straightened them. I refused to fall apart in front of them. Behind Derek, Sabrina tried to cover her mouth, but I saw her smile. She leaned in and whispered to her friend, and they both giggled like it was some kind of joke. Derek's friends looked away, clearly uncomfortable, but no one said a word. It was supposed to be Derek's housewarming party. That's what they all thought. The truth was, I never even wanted to come. Sabrina had talked me into it, calling it a small family barbecue to celebrate Derek taking over the house. As if I'd already signed it over. But I hadn't. And after what just happened, I never would. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my sweater. My pride burned hotter than the water had. This wasn't just a house. It was the last gift my husband gave me before cancer took him. It was where I raised Derek alone. Every brick, every corner of this place held memories, of hard work, of late nights, of love. And now I was standing in the backyard, soaked and humiliated, surrounded by people who couldn't wait for me to disappear so they could split up what I had built. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my ears. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to wipe that smug smile off Sabrina's face. But I didn't. I looked Derek in the eyes and said 4 words, calm and steady, "You'll regret this, Derek." His expression flickered. Maybe it was surprise. Maybe even fear. But he quickly covered it with that same cocky grin. "No, you will, Mother," he said. "One way or another, you're signing. Don't forget who takes care of you." I didn't reply. I just turned and walked into the house, leaving wet footprints across the patio. My chest was tight, my heart still racing, but I kept my back straight. I would not let them see me cry. Not this time. They thought they had pushed me into a corner. But they had no idea what they just started. Inside, I leaned against the door for a moment, trying to catch my breath. I could still hear faint laughter from outside, but I blocked it out. Something inside me had changed. Everything had changed. I walked to the fireplace and stared at the old family photos on the mantel. One showed Derek as a little boy, grinning with 2 missing front teeth, holding a fishing rod almost as big as him. His father, Tom, stood behind him, gently helping him steady it. Tom had been gone for 20 years now. If he were still here, none of this would be happening. I ran my fingers over the photo frame, feeling the tiny marks in the wood from when Derek used to knock it over while running through the house. Back then, he was my whole world. My only child. The reason I kept going after losing Tom. I worked 2 jobs. I skipped vacations. I saved every penny, just so Derek wouldn't feel like he was missing out. I really believed I was doing the right thing. I thought raising him on my own would bring us closer. But somewhere along the way, my love turned into something he thought he deserved, like my sacrifices belonged to him. Like this house was just something waiting for him to claim. The fridge hummed quietly behind me. The smell of barbecue still drifted in from the yard. My hands clenched into fists. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Then came a knock at the back door. Sabrina's sugary voice floated through. "Come on, Mom. Don't be so dramatic. Just sign the papers and enjoy the evening." I didn't move. I didn't answer. I just let her voice fade while I stood there, wet, angry, heartbroken, staring at the smiling faces frozen in those old photos. They liked what I gave them, my money, my time, my help. But they didn't really love me. Not in the way I needed. And for the first time, I was finally starting to see the difference. A few days before that awful backyard scene, it had already started. I was in the kitchen, wiping the counter, when Derek came in and shut the door just a little too hard. His voice was calm, but I could hear something underneath, pressure. I'd heard that tone before. It always came right before he asked for something. "Mom," he said with a smile, like we were just having a friendly chat. "I've been thinking about the future, you know, for the kids, for Sabrina and me. And this house, it's too much for you now." I kept wiping the counter, pretending I didn't hear the shift in his voice. He kept going, leaning in like he had some brilliant idea. "We could turn it into an investment," he said. "Fix it up a little, rent it out for now. When the kids are older, they'd have something solid waiting for them." I finally set the cloth down and looked at him. "This is my home, Derek," I said gently. "I'm not ready to give it up." He laughed, that quick, dismissive little laugh that always made me feel small. "Mom, you're not giving anything up. You'd still live here, of course. We'd just change the paperwork. On paper, it's just smarter." I stared at him. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about the kids. This was about power. About control. He was dressing it up as help, but underneath, it was about getting what he wanted. "I worked my whole life for this house," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is where I built a life with your father. Where I raised you. Alone. I earned this." For a second, the smile slipped from his face. Then he reached for my hand, like I was being dramatic. "Mom, don't be so emotional. We're family. What's mine is yours, and what's yours will be mine one day anyway. Why not make it official now? Sabrina says it'll make things easier." "Of course, Sabrina." Always whispering in his ear. I pulled my hand away and stepped back. "No, Derek. I'm not ready to sign anything. This is still my home." His eyes darkened. The charm vanished, replaced with something harder. But he didn't push. Not right then. It didn't take long for Sabrina to make her next move. She didn't come at me directly. That's not her style. She worked quietly, almost like slipping a knife in between your ribs without leaving a mark. At first, I thought I was just imagining it, neighbors acting a little strange, people avoiding eye contact at church, small talk getting more awkward. But then the whispers started. "She hasn't been herself lately. She's having trouble keeping up with that big house. Maybe someone should step in, for her safety." I knew exactly where it was coming from. Sabrina was clever, I'll give her that. She didn't shout for control, she planted little seeds in just the right places. Always through someone else. Always in a whisper. Even people I'd known for years started looking at me differently, like they were waiting for me to say I was overwhelmed or confused. Like they were expecting me to admit I couldn't handle things anymore. One day after church, I sat on a bench under the big oak tree with my friend Carol. We sipped lemonade like we always did. Then she leaned in and spoke quietly. "They've started spreading rumors, you know." I kept my face calm, but my stomach sank. "What kind of rumors?" Carol glanced around. "That you're forgetful. That you're letting the house fall apart. That Derek's just trying to help before things get worse." I swallowed and forced a tiny smile. "I see." "I told them it's nonsense," Carol added quickly. "You're sharper than anyone I know. But you know how people are, they believe whatever's easiest." And that was it. People love a simple story. The aging widow, slowly losing her grip, too stubborn to let her loving family help. It was the perfect story for Sabrina to spin. And Derek? Whether he believed it or not, he was letting her tell it for both of them. My chest burned with anger. After everything I'd done, after years of working 2 jobs, skipping vacations, saving every penny so Derek would never feel the weight of what we'd lost, this was who I was to them now? Some weak, old woman who needed to be handled? No. Not me. I stood up from that bench, and I knew right then, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I brushed off invisible crumbs from my skirt and took a deep breath to steady my voice. "Let them talk, Carol," I said calmly. She looked at me, surprised. "You're not worried, I'm furious," I said, keeping my voice calm and even. "But I'm not about to let them see me shaken. Not now." And Carol gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "You're stronger than they think." I nodded. "That's what they're about to find out." Inside, I knew this was just the beginning. Sabrina wasn't coming at me with lawyers, not yet. She was building something else, a story. A case of quiet gossip and carefully placed lies. So when the time came to really push, she'd have a chorus of voices ready to nod along with her. But what they didn't know, not Derek, not Sabrina, not their little team of whisperers, was that while they were plotting, I was already preparing. I wasn't just going to defend my home. I was going to fight for it, really fight. The whispers didn't stop. If anything, they got worse. With every sideways glance from a neighbor who used to smile, with every comment Sabrina slipped into the wind, something inside me shifted. But it wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was focus. That's when I pulled out the old binder from my closet. The one I used to keep Derek's school papers in, back when life was simple and my biggest worry was whether he'd passed his spelling test. Now it had a new job. I started building my file. I printed every text Derek had sent about the house, about transferring the deed, about how it would be better for the kids. I wrote down dates, times, exact words. I kept track of every conversation, even the little ones with neighbors like Mrs. Appleton and Mr. Callahan, just in case their whispers ever came up later. Then I started recording. Quietly, without making a fuss. At dinners, during visits, I'd Placed my phone nearby and captured Derek's casual comments about how it was almost time and how we just need the signature. He was so sure of himself. So certain I'd cave. Carol was the only one who knew what I was doing. She'd been by my side through everything, through losing Tom, through raising Derek on my own, through the nights I cried and didn't let anyone see. When I told her about the things Sabrina was saying behind my back, her lips tightened. "You've always been too soft on them," she said. "But not anymore. You're stronger than you think, Doris." I didn't argue. I just nodded, because for the first time, I believed it too. Then I saw it, a plain white flyer pinned to the community center bulletin board, almost hidden behind yoga schedules and lost cat notices. Free legal seminar, elder rights and property protection. Learn how to defend your assets from family pressure. I stared at it for a long moment. It felt like someone had put it there just for me. My first reaction was to shrug it off. I didn't need it, I thought. I wasn't being abused. I was still in control. But then again, hadn't I once believed Derek would never speak to me the way he did? That Sabrina would never turn people against me? I tore off the little tab at the bottom and tucked it into my purse. By 6 p.m., I was sitting in a folding chair in a small back room at the community center. Around me were about 20 others, mostly women like me. Some had thick folders with them, like they were already knee-deep in battles of their own. They were quiet but alert, faces lined with worry and strength. At the front stood a young lawyer. No fancy suit. Just a clean shirt, rolled sleeves, and calm, steady eyes. He looked at each of us like we mattered. He started simply, "Many of you are here because someone you love, or thought you loved, is trying to take something that belongs to you." His words weren't dramatic. Just honest. Painfully honest. People around me nodded. I did too. He talked about things I'd heard of but never imagined would apply to me: power of attorney, property transfers, manipulation, and how easy it was for family to create a story about concern to quietly take control. And how hard it is to undo once it starts. I wrote fast, notes covering every line of my notebook. "Documentation is your shield," he said. "Every conversation. Every offer made with pressure. Every threat. The more you record, the stronger your case." I thought of my binder. The recordings. The voice recorder Carol had given me. Without even realizing it, I was already doing everything he described. I was protecting myself before I even knew the full reason why. When the seminar ended and most people had trickled out, I stayed behind. I walked up to the front and waited. Until he turned toward me. "Mr. Hartman?" I said quietly. He turned to me with a polite smile and said, "Yes, ma'am." I introduced myself, then took a breath and added, "I think my son and his wife are trying to push me out of my own home. They've started saying I'm losing my mind." His face didn't change, not a flicker of surprise or judgment. Just calm and focused. "You've started keeping records, I assume?" he asked. I nodded. "Everything's written down, recorded, dated." "Good," he said firmly. "That will make all the difference if this turns into a legal fight." I paused, my throat tightening. "Do you think they can actually win?" He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Not if you stay one step ahead, and from what I can see, you already are." For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Just a tiny spark, like sunlight peeking through thick clouds of fear and shame. I thanked him and left the center that evening with a strange calm washing over me. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was something stronger: preparation. I wasn't just sitting around waiting for their next move anymore. I was ready. And this time, I wouldn't be the one caught off guard. That night, the house was too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you feel like the walls are listening. It was almost midnight when I heard Derek's voice coming from the kitchen. I had gone to bed early, pretending I was tired, but I couldn't sleep. My mind was spinning, and the summer heat made the house creak and groan. I sat in the dark, listening. Then I heard it, his voice. Calm, confident, cold. I quietly crept from my room, walking slowly and carefully down the hallway. The kitchen door was open just enough for me to see the soft glow of his phone lighting up his face. "She's close," Derek was saying. "You know how stubborn she is, but she's slipping. I'll get her to sign eventually. Might take another push, but Sabrina's working the neighbors. We'll make sure everyone thinks she can't handle the place anymore." My stomach turned. His voice had no warmth. No kindness. The concern he used to show me in front of family? That was all an act. This was the real Derek. Cold. Calculating. Already planning to erase me from my own life. But what if she refuses again? I heard someone ask on the phone. Derek laughed. "She won't. We're setting the stage. Sabrina's already got half the church ladies gossiping. Once we get a doctor to suggest a wellness check, the court will have to act." It'll all look official, like it's for her own good. My legs felt like jelly, but my mind kicked into gear. This wasn't just talk, they had a plan. A real one. If they could get me declared mentally unfit, they'd take over everything. I slipped my hand into the pocket of my robe and felt the small recorder Carol had given me. My fingers found the button. I pressed it. The red light blinked on. I stood there, barely breathing, as Derek's voice poured out, every cruel, calculated word, captured forever. Once she signs the house over, or the court gives us control, we can refinance, sell it, whatever. The market's hot. It's now or never. My chest ached, but I kept calm. The call lasted a few more minutes, then Derek finally hung up. I stepped back into the shadows before he left the kitchen, and slipped upstairs without him noticing. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the recorder in my hand. Proof. Real proof. Not just of what they were doing, but of who they really were. This wasn't love. It wasn't concern. It was a heist, dressed up in fake smiles and Sunday manners. I kept replaying his words in my mind. I didn't feel shocked anymore. That part of me had gone quiet. What got me now was how cold it all was, how easy it was for him to talk about destroying my life like he was reading off a checklist. The boy I raised? He was gone. But I wasn't. I placed the recorder gently in the drawer next to my bed and whispered into the dark, "You want war, Derek? You've got one." The first sign came a week later, quiet but clear. Or rather, it didn't come at all. I realized the mail was lighter than usual. Just a few junk ads and a gardening magazine. No bank letters. No deletables. Nothing important. By the third day, I knew it wasn't just a fluke. That morning, I caught Sabrina sneaking away from the mailbox. She acted like she hadn't seen me watching from the porch, adjusting her sunglasses and flashing that bright, fake smile she always used when pretending to be sweet. "Good morning," she chirped like nothing was wrong. But I knew better now. Sabrina called out sweetly, "Lovely weather, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I just stood there on the porch, watching her walk back to her car. I kept my face calm and still, but inside, my stomach was in knots. Sabrina wasn't the kind of person to make open threats, not yet, anyway. But she was changing her strategy. Now, it was about playing dirty with paperwork. If they could mess with my mail, they could keep me in the dark. No bills? I'd miss payments. No notices? I'd have no idea what was happening. And if things fell apart, like if I missed taxes or didn't pay the mortgage on time, Derek could swoop in, claiming I wasn't fit to manage the house anymore. He was doing it quietly, sneaky-like, hoping I wouldn't catch on until it was too late. But I did. That night, I pulled out my growing notebook. I opened to a fresh page and wrote down everything. July 22nd, caught Sabrina at the mailbox. Important mail missing, statements and legal documents likely withheld on purpose. Then, I opened a folder I kept in my desk drawer. It had my written notes and the voice recorder Carol had given me. On the tab, I'd labeled it with one word, defense. Later that day, Carol stopped by again. She saw me filing away my notes and raised an eyebrow. "They're getting desperate," she said softly. "They know you're not giving in, so they're trying to make it look like you're not capable." I nodded. "They want the system to do their dirty work for them." Carol leaned in a little, her voice low. "You're still seeing that lawyer, right?" "Tomorrow," I said. "Downtown. I've already made copies of everything." She smiled, not with pity, but with something else. Respect. "Good. You keep staying one step ahead." I sat back and let a deep breath fill my lungs. That steady feeling returned, like steel under my skin. They thought I was weak because I wasn't screaming. They thought my silence meant I'd given up. But I wasn't being silent. I was listening. Watching. Recording everything they did. Downtown was buzzing the next day, but I felt strangely calm as I walked into the law office. It was a small building tucked between a bakery and a hardware store, one of those places you walk past 100 times and never really notice. No marble floors or big, fancy desks. Just bookshelves filled with binders and a soft leather chair across from a plain wooden desk. Mr. Allen sat behind it. He was older than I expected, maybe in his 60s, with sharp eyes and a quiet kind of confidence. Without saying much, I placed everything on his desk. My notebook. The transcripts I'd typed up from the recordings. Photos of Sabrina at the mailbox. The folder marked defense. He didn't rush. He looked through each item carefully, flipping pages slowly, occasionally writing notes in the margins. The room was silent except for the sound of paper and the scratch of his pen. Finally, he leaned back and looked at me. "You've done more homework than most people ever do before they walk in here," he said. I gave a small smile. "I've had time." Mr. Allen nodded slowly, then spoke clearly, every word landing heavy. "Let me be very clear with you, Mrs. Morgan. What your son and his wife are doing, spreading rumors, hiding your mail, those recorded threats, that's classic undue influence. Hearing it put like that, legal, official, it hit hard. This wasn't just a messy family disagreement. It was a full-on plan to steal my home and my rights. Can they win? I asked, my voice quiet. If you stay silent and let them shape the story, yes. Easily, he said. That's how these things go wrong. People think love will stop their family from going that far. It almost never does. I nodded. That's why I'm here. His expression softened just a little, a flicker of something kind in his eyes. Good, he said. Because you've got a strong case, especially with that recording. He tapped the printed transcript where Derek's voice was clear as day. Once we get a doctor involved, the court won't have a choice. That sentence, Mr. Allen continued, shows their intent. They're not worried about your well-being. They're setting up a trap to take control, and judges don't like that one bit. I swallowed hard but kept my voice steady. So, what do I do now? He leaned forward, his voice steady and sure. You stay calm. Keep documenting. Keep recording everything. But don't confront them directly, not yet. We'll start with filing complaints for elder harassment and be ready to lock down your ownership, Mr. Allen said, his voice calm but serious. If they make any legal moves, we'll be ready with a full defense. And if they still don't back off, he gave a small, knowing smile, then we'll take them to court. For the first time in weeks, I let out a full breath. The tight weight that had been pressing down on my chest finally lifted, maybe not completely, but enough. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. And more importantly, I wasn't helpless. As I stepped out of his office that afternoon, the summer air felt different, lighter, freer. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but now I knew I wasn't just sitting and waiting. I had already chosen my battlefield. That night at the community center's bingo game, the room buzzed with friendly chatter, laughter, and the soft click of plastic chips hitting the tables. It was a strange kind of therapy, sitting there pretending everything was normal. I sat beside Carol, dabbing numbers on my card with a smile. B2, the caller announced. I marked the square, but my mind was somewhere else entirely, at home, where my son was circling like a vulture. Don't let your face give you away, Carol whispered, leaning in. I'm fine, I whispered back, keeping the smile frozen in place. She gave me a look. No, you're not. But you're doing damn well at pretending. I let my guard down for just a moment and sighed. I have to, Carol. The more normal I act, the more they think I'm slipping into a harmless routine. They think you're getting too old to notice what's going on, she said. They're underestimating you. Exactly, I said. That's their first mistake. And it was. I needed them to think I was fading, like an old memory. Let Derek and Sabrina believe I was sitting quietly in my house while they plotted my removal. Let them assume I was confused, that I didn't see the moves they were making. Because while they whispered in corners and forged their plans, I was collecting evidence. Every rumor Sabrina spread, every document Derek brought me, I was saving it all. I wasn't scared. I was waiting. Every extra day gave me more time to prepare, to build my case, to watch them trip over their own arrogance. They were careless. Stealing the mail. Talking too freely at night. Letting their intentions slip out in phone calls and gossip. And I had it all, recorded, written down, dated. I reached into my purse and touched the small recorder. My quiet little witness. Still running. Still capturing every word. And Mr. Allen? He wasn't wasting any time either. He had already begun filing legal protections for me. He was reviewing the deed to my home, locking down my financial records, and building a wall of paperwork they wouldn't see coming. Across the table, Carol took a sip of tea and smiled. You know, I always thought you were too patient for your own good. I smiled back. No, Carol. I've always been patient for a reason. That night, the warm summer breeze swirled around me as I stood on the porch. The wind chimes tinkled gently, the light above the door glowed softly. I looked at my house, and felt stronger than I had in weeks. They thought I was just waiting to lose. But the longer they waited, the more mistakes they made. And those mistakes were going to bury them. The knock came early the next morning. But I was already awake, fully dressed, sitting in my chair by the front window, tea in hand, waiting. I saw Derek's car pull into the driveway. He got out holding a folder, thin, but official looking. Too stiff to be casual. Sabrina wasn't with him. She never was when things needed to look polite. She stayed behind the scenes, pulling the strings. But I knew she was watching. She always was. I opened the door before he had the chance to knock again. Morning, Mom, he said, with that fake half-smile I'd seen too many times. Got a few papers I'd like you to look over. Just some routine stuff for the house. Nothing major. I stepped aside and let him in, keeping my face still and unreadable. He sat at the kitchen table and placed the folder in front of me like he was offering a gift. Go ahead. Take your time, he said, gesturing toward the documents. We just figured it'd be good to get a few things in order, you know? Make sure everything's squared away. And I smiled, because I already knew exactly what he was trying to do. Everything looked neatly in place, for them. I sat quietly, flipping through the papers one by one, trying to stay calm. There were forms to transfer the house, documents giving them control over my medical and financial decisions. All written in that sneaky, soft legal language that sounds like it's for your own good, unless you're really paying attention. And I was paying attention. What they didn't know was that I had a small recorder in my pocket, silently picking up every word. Derek smiled as I looked over the pages. It's all pretty normal, Mom, he said casually. Just in case something ever happens to you, God forbid. It just makes things easier for everyone. Everyone but me. I closed the folder gently. My hands were steady. My voice calm. Thanks for thinking of me, Derek, I said softly. But I'm not ready to sign anything today. His smile faded, just for a second. No pressure, he said quickly. We're just planning ahead. Sabrina and I talked to a financial advisor, and they said this kind of stuff is smart to take care of early. I nodded. Planning is important. His jaw tightened. Well, how much time do you need to think it over? I let the silence sit for a moment, watching how impatient he was getting. Then I said quietly, you know how careful I like to be. He tried to laugh it off, but I could feel it, he was frustrated. Mom, we're trying to help you. You don't want things getting messy later, right? I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I wanted him to see I was still in control. Of course not, sweetheart. And you've always said I'm careful to a fault. That's just who I am. He chuckled stiffly, but I saw it in his eyes, he knew I was stalling. And the worst part for him? He didn't know why. I stood up and walked him to the door with the same polite smile on my face. Thanks again for thinking of me, I said. As he stepped outside. I'll let you know when I'm ready. He paused on the porch, searching my face for any sign of weakness. But I gave him nothing. All right, he muttered, and walked to his car. As soon as the door closed, my smile dropped. I walked straight to my desk, pulled out my notebook, and added a new entry, July 28th, coercion attempt. Derek brought legal forms trying to take ownership of the house and control medical decisions. Refused to sign. Entire conversation recorded. I leaned back and let out a slow breath. They were trying harder now, pushing more. But every push gave me more proof. And every note in my file made me stronger. By the time I filed for the restraining order, the fear was gone. I wasn't acting out of anger or sadness anymore. I felt something sharper, cold, focused, steady. My lawyer, Mr. Allen, had everything in place, the recordings, my notes, the legal documents. All organized and ready for court. My story wasn't just a warning in my head anymore. It was real. On paper. In court. And they couldn't twist it or hide it behind closed doors. The restraining order was just the beginning, a protective step filed under elder harassment laws. It wasn't dramatic, but it gave me space. It kept Derek away from me, my home, and my finances while we locked everything down legally. Mr. Allen worked like someone who'd done this 100 times before. Calm, fast, confident. His steadiness helped me stay strong. These cases are taken seriously now, Mrs. Morgan, he told me. Elder financial abuse is more common than ever. Good, I said quietly. Then they'll know what they're looking at. He smiled. And you've given us what most people don't, clear, solid proof. We alerted the housing board and the county office too. My property was officially frozen. No one, not even Derek, could change the title without me being there in person with a lawyer. No fake signatures. No sneaky paperwork. When I walked out of the courthouse that afternoon, I paused on the steps and took a deep breath. The warm breeze hit my face. For weeks, I'd felt like I was trapped in my own home, like I couldn't breathe. But now, I felt grounded. Strong. Not victorious yet, but finally steady. Back home, Carol was waiting with groceries, and that loyal look in her eyes that reminded me I wasn't alone. You're really doing it, she said. You're really doing it, Carol said as she set the grocery bags down on the kitchen counter. You're taking your life back. I nodded, letting out a breath. Piece by piece. She looked over at the thick folder sitting on the table. It was packed with everything, voice recordings, notes, official documents. The proof. They don't see it yet, she said quietly, but you're about to crush them. I hadn't told Carol everything right away. I just invited her over. For our usual cup of tea. But the moment she walked in, she noticed something was different. You're glowing, she said with a half smile, half wonder. What did you do? I poured her tea and, for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to smile. I filed, I said. Her eyes widened, then softened with pride. Good girl, she said gently. They don't know it yet, but you just flipped the whole board. By that evening, the sheriff's office already had the court order in hand. They were scheduled to make their first official visit later that week. Derek, of course, had no idea. He still thought he was in control. He believed he had time. Let him enjoy it. The storm was coming, and this time, I was the one calling the thunder. When the knock came, it wasn't Derek's this time. It was firm, official. I opened the door and found 2 uniformed officers on my porch. A third man in plain clothes stood behind them holding a large envelope stamped with the county seal. I noticed the neighbors too, watching from behind curtains, pretending to water their plants. But I saw them. I saw everything. Mrs. Morgan? One of the officers asked politely. Yes, I answered, calm and steady. We're here to serve official notice of eviction proceedings against Derek and Sabrina Morgan, he said, handing me the documents. By order of the Housing Board and County Court. The plainclothes officer stepped forward and taped a bright yellow notice right onto my front door. Eviction order, unauthorized occupants must vacate immediately. The letters were big, bold, impossible to miss. Then came the sound of a car door slamming behind us. I turned and saw Derek's car pulling into the driveway. Sabrina was in the passenger seat. The second Derek saw the paper on my door, the color drained from his face. He jumped out of the car before it even stopped all the way. What the hell is this? He shouted, marching up the path toward me. Sabrina followed close behind, eyes darting from neighbor to neighbor. You can't do this, Mom, Derek snapped. You can't just throw us out. The officers stepped between us, calm but firm. Sir, you need to step back. You're in violation of a court order. I didn't say anything right away. I let the silence sit there. Heavy. Real. Sabrina grabbed his arm and hissed, You said she wouldn't go through with it. You said she didn't have the guts. He pulled away from her, flushed with anger and sweat. You don't understand, Mom, he said, trying to sound heartfelt. This is our family home. Someone's gotten in your head. You're being lied to. For a moment, he almost sounded sincere. Almost. But I had seen too much. No one lied to me, Derek, I said calmly. I've recorded everything. Every word, every trick, every little plan. I saw it all. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked like he was trying to find something, anything, to say. You should have come to me first, he finally yelled. We could have worked this out. Why would you go behind my back? I let the smallest smile touch my lips. Not out of joy, but from truth. You went behind mine first. His jaw tightened. Sabrina tugged at his arm again. Derek, we need to go. Now. He looked around and finally noticed the growing crowd. Neighbors at windows. Faces peeking from porches. All of them watching the scene unfold. The perfect image he'd built, the helpful, worried son, was crumbling in front of everyone. One of the officers stepped forward. Sir, if you continue to resist, we'll be forced to take you into custody. For one scary second, I thought. Derek might hit someone. His fists clenched, face red. But then his shoulders dropped. This isn't over, he muttered, eyes burning with rage. You'll regret this. I looked him in the eyes and said, softly but firmly, no. I won't. Not even for a second. The officer stayed close until Derek finally turned and walked back to his car. And just like that, it was done. Sabrina hurried after Derek, her usual proud expression completely gone. The car engine roared as they sped off down the driveway. From behind closed windows, I could see neighbors watching, whispering to each other. I stood there for a while, just looking at the bright yellow eviction notice flapping in the wind. They thought they could bully me into giving up. They thought they could embarrass me into silence. But now they were the ones walking away, angry, defeated, and exposed. The pounding on my front door came just after sunset. Not a knock. This was loud, angry, and violent, the kind of banging that made the whole frame shake. But I didn't flinch. I had been expecting it. Open up, Mom. Derek yelled through the screen, his voice wild and out of control. You think you can do this? Kick us out like we're criminals? I stood behind the locked door, calm, my hands resting lightly on the kitchen counter. The officers had told me not to engage, to stay inside and let them handle it. But I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to see that I wasn't scared anymore. You did this to yourself, Derek, I said quietly but firmly, my voice cutting through the evening air. You pushed too far. Sabrina's voice screeched behind him, full of panic now. We gave you every chance, you ungrateful old witch. Derek slammed his fist against the screen again. We're family. You think a piece of paper changes that? You've lost your mind, Mom. They'll see it in court. Behind me, the little red light on my recorder blinked steadily. Every word. Every threat. Every lie. All captured. You tried to steal my home, I said. You tried to take everything I built for this family. You stood in my kitchen, pretending to care, while secretly planning to have me declared unfit. You're twisting everything. Derek shouted. We were trying to help you. You're old. You don't even need this house. I stepped closer to the door. My voice stayed soft, but it was strong, unshakable. You didn't want to help me, Derek. You wanted to replace me. One of the officers who had been stationed down the street began walking toward the house, his hand resting near his belt. Sir, the officer said firmly. You've been warned not to contact her. If you continue, we'll take you into custody. Derek turned to him, his anger boiling over. She's my mother. She's not right in the head. Look at what she's doing, she's tearing this family apart. That's when I saw it. His rage was turning into panic. He wasn't just fighting for the house anymore, he was fighting because he realized he was losing control, and fast. The officer's tone got sharper. Sir, step away from the door. Sabrina grabbed his arm. Derek, stop. Let's go. But he wouldn't move. His face twisted in frustration, his breathing fast and shaky. You'll die alone, you know that, he spat. After everything I did for you, you'll sit here in this house and rot. The officer stepped right between us, his hand now gripping his holster. That's enough. I didn't blink. I didn't move. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Better alone than surrounded by leeches, I said calmly. Better alone than used. That was it. The officer grabbed Derek's shoulder and pulled him back. We're done here. Go. Sabrina dragged him to the car as his angry curses echoed into the night. The door slammed. The engine growled. And once again, they were gone. The officer lingered for a moment, watching them disappear, then turned back to me. His face softened slightly as the tension cleared. You handled that well, ma'am, he said quietly. I nodded. Thank you for staying nearby. He tipped his hat and walked off, his shadow fading down the driveway. Inside, I locked the door behind me and stood there in the stillness. My heart was racing, but not from fear. From something else. Relief. Strength. Control. They thought I would break. Tonight. Instead, they gave me more evidence. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Not because of the air conditioning, but because of the atmosphere. Eyes were everywhere, watching, judging, waiting. Derek sat at the table across from me. His lawyer was young and clearly nervous, flipping through a thin folder. The best they could gather were a few weak character statements and some made-up claims about me not being able to handle things on my own. Sabrina sat next to him, stiff and sour-faced. Her lips were tight, her eyes full of that same smirk she always wore when she thought she was winning. She had no idea that smile wouldn't last.